welcome to our lecture. Today I want to talk about professional scheduling. Now the first question that students often ask me around schedules is, why on earth do I need to create a schedule? Well, the first reason, perhaps the most important one, is that 7% of your grade goes back to the schedule that you keep and creating a schedule. The second reason is that we want to encourage students to work on their topics and diagrams throughout the course rather than procrastinating to the very end of class. In the real world, we always have to work on a deadline, and we want to try to emulate that real world here in this class. The next thing I want you to know when it comes to schedules is that, as in the real world, schedules do change, and I understand that. It's important, though, that you take the time and you think through your schedule in the beginning, but that as things change, that you keep me updated so that I continually have an updated and new schedule throughout the semester. Now, what I want to make sure that you aren't doing, though, is each week just updating your schedule and sending it to me again to, as you go. I want to make sure that you're pushing yourself to meet your deadlines, because that is really what you're going to be graded on when it really comes down to it, is how closely you stayed to your deadlines. So just like in the real world where we have to provide estimates, where we have to update our stakeholders when there are changes in our schedule, I want you to be able to do the same thing. So that brings us to the darn schedules. Well, you have two different schedules that you need to put together. The first one is a personal or an individual schedule. This represents the work that you will be individually doing as you're learning the topics, as you are writing code, and as you're building your own individual application. The second one I want you to provide is for your team. And so you only have to provide one of those for your team. But just like we talked about earlier, as your the times change or your schedule changes, you still need to keep me updated. Your team schedule will be provided with your team presentation. Your individual schedule can just be sent to me, and both of these are due during week 2. So what I want to do is to show you a couple of examples of schedules that I've created. Now these are just examples. Be creative. I don't want you to necessarily turn in exactly what I'm showing you, but what I want to do is be able to understand how you're going to deliver on the deliverables or the things that you need to turn in for this course. Your schedule only needs to focus on 2 parts: the technology topics and the UML diagrams and test group. It does not have to focus on your professionalism, nor does it have to focus on your journal. Those 2 items are usually turned in the last couple of weeks of the course. And so I'm not too concerned about them because they're not as iterative in the way that you turn them in. So I'm just focusing on technologies and diagrams. If you want to put your professionalism and your journal in here, that is fine with me, but it just isn't required. So what I've done here is create a spreadsheet, and along the left side I've put the various topics and the diagrams and such. Along the top, I've tried to illustrate the progression that you go through as you create your understanding portfolio. Now remember a couple of things. The first is that your portfolio is iterative. What that means is that you don't have to work on collections, Java collections, until you have it 100% done before you turn it in. In fact, I highly, 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 highly discourage that. Okay? Rather, you do some research on Java collections, and you write a simple program, and you turn that in. And then I look at it, and I give you feedback, and I may say, hey, you're on the right track. Here are some things you might try. And then I may also kind of give you an idea of what you need next. Okay? The next thing that you probably turn in for your understanding portfolio is a more complex program that's really testing it out, and so that you can show me evidence that you're really starting to understand it. Okay? It might use some logging, it might use some exception handling, it might do some things like that. And then you turn that in, and then I give you some feedback, and I send it back to you. And then the third kind of iteration, or the third level, is where you start to integrate these technologies into your own personal application and into your team application, so that I'm not just seeing one technology work, I'm not just seeing a Java collection, I'm seeing Hibernate return a collection of objects in an application that's using MVC. And so you're starting to see all of these technologies start to work together. Okay, so what I want you to do in your schedule is start to plot out when you're going to work on each of the various topics and when you're going to kind of go through these various iterations. And like I described before or mentioned before, this doesn't have to be absolutely perfect. I understand that schedule might change a little bit as you get into it. You may find that it takes you longer to learn Hibernate than you thought it was going to learn and it takes you a lot longer than it did to learn Java collections or whatever. But again, I want you to update it as it goes along. So here is just an example of what a personal or an individual schedule might look like. The next one I want to show you is a team schedule. So again, we kind of have the same kind of iterations, but we have the topics again along the left. Now I'm thinking about it from a team standpoint. So the first thing we're going to do as a team is we're going to assign out these topics to be taught. So everybody has an opportunity to teach a topic or two. Okay. The next thing that we want to start doing is we're creating a team application. So let's start using that topic within our application. And then the third is now we kind of start to consolidate all of our work together and we test it. We make sure that it runs, and that might mean that we have to refactor it a little bit. So those are kind of the iterations that a team goes through. Also, think about your methodology as a part of this, right? If you want to have these as stories, or you want to think about how you're going to be approaching this as a team, okay? And then from that, then you will show me what your schedule looks like. You know, in my work environment, we use a product called Jira, which is an Atlassian product, and it's very commonly used for Scrum methodology. And we create our stories, and we size our sprints, and we manage through that using that tool. You know, you may not have access to Jira, although it is freely available, but it has a learning curve. And so, you know, you may want to do this just using a spreadsheet or whatever you want to do, okay? But show me how you're going to progress, how your assignments are going to work, and then how the schedule is going to function. So I really, really hope that as you go through this process, you're going to have a pretty well-defined schedule that you can follow, that I can understand and track, with the understanding, again, that it might change here or there a little bit. But you know, you're not going to be completely throwing it away and rewriting it every week. But you're going to be something that progresses and you evolve over time.